Okay, guys. So we'll just continue on the operators topic. So whatever is the pending operators that is there, we'll try to finish it off in this session. Okay, so the next operator, last class, that is in yesterday's session, we were discussing a few more points regarding your relational and logical operators, and then we discussed about your membership operators. So today we will be starting with the identity operators. Okay, so now before going into the identity operators, okay, let us quickly revise on how the memory management or the memory is allocated for my variables. Okay, so in Python, how is the memory allocation going to happen for my variables? Okay, so first thing what you have to know is I am going to here in Python. Okay, so in Python, when we take memory allocation is going to happen based on the values. So please remember this point very carefully. So in Python, memory allocation will happen, okay, will happen based on values. Okay, and you know that there are two types of data. We have mutable and we have the immutable data. So we have two types of information we can store. One is a mutable type, other one is a immutable type. So what do you mean by a mutable type? Anything that can be modified. So any data that can be modified is what we call as a mutable type, and what cannot be modified. So when it cannot be modified, once it's created, I cannot change the values. So it cannot be modified means we call that as an immutable data. Okay, so first let us understand what are the mutable and what are the immutable things we have in Python. So when we talk about immutable, all the basic data types, okay, all the basic data types that I have. So what are the basic data types I have? I have integer, I have float, I have string, I have complex, I have bool. So all these are my basic or my primitive or the what do you call fundamental data types. So all these basic data types comes under the immutable category. So please remember all these data types comes under the immutable category. Other than this, what else is immutable? What else is immutable is tuples. Tuples. So we have the concept of tuples, that is also comes under immutable type. That is, once you create, we cannot further modify the values. Okay, I will tell you more about this. Wait. So what do you mean by mutable? I said mutable means anything that can be changed. Even after creating it, I can modify it. I can do the changes to it. So that type is what we call as mutable. So what are the mutable categories here in Python is list, sets, dictionaries. So these are the mutable category. So these are the mutable category. These are the immutable category. Okay. Now see, the memory allocation is really a very tricky concept in Python. It is not same. From lot of data types, it actually differs. And this memory allocation itself is a very deep thing that we have to go in. Okay, but for a programmer, okay, you are just going to become a programmer. You're just going to do the basic things. It is not so much needed. You don't have to go so in depth into it. Okay, just understand the basic concepts of it. I'm telling you for an interview point of view, for a for you to do the project, that level I'm telling you. If you're going completely into the development side, getting placed in the company and all those things, there the training is going to be different. So don't compare this with that. So here you're just learning the fundamentals of your Python, how to exactly do my programs, how to exactly do my code, so that you can enter into a job. So that is your focus here. So for learning that, you don't have to go too much into detail about the memory allocation, how it is happening, understanding that this and all, it's not required. So just grasp the basic concepts of it. Okay, so now first category, what I say, immutable. All the basic categories are immutable. Okay, let us take an example of an integer. Okay, so I am saying a is equal to 10. This is the value I am assigning for the variable a. Now I am saying print A, comma, ID of A. So you are already familiar like what is the ID? ID is nothing but a predefined function that actually gives you the address. Address of where the data is going to be stored. That address you can know with the help of the ID function. So this is one step I'm doing. So just run the program. Yes, so A's value is 10 and that is stored at this particular memory location or the memory address. Right. So now in the next line of the program, I am saying A is equal to 100. Okay, I'm just saying A is equal to 100. Now you may ask me, ma'am, this is I'm changing it. Then how do you say it is immutable? Basic concept. Everybody will ask that only, na. So I'm first line, I'm giving the A value to be 10. Then in line 3,
Ma'am,
I'm
this
giving,
concept completed, ma'am.
yes, I know that, ma. I'm just telling you in reference to the identity operator. So how is the identity operator going to play a role in that? With reference to that only, I was just telling you. Okay, just a small recap of it. Okay,
Okay.
done. So here you go. I am saying A comma ID of A again. So when you run this, see what happens basically. You're going to get two different addresses. It is not the same address. So what is the happening here? So first time when the A is assigned with a value, so what did I say? The memory location will happen based on the values. So what it will do? It will create a memory address. Okay, it will store the value 10. It is going to store the value 10 in this particular memory address and the variable A will point to this address. The variable A will just point to this address. So now when I am saying A is equal to 100. So 100 is a new value. So what it is going to do? For 100, it will create another memory location. It will store this value inside this memory address. And now A, instead of pointing to this address, now it will point to this address. Okay, so A is not having the same address. So that is why I said it is immutable. So once you create, you cannot modify the value. If it is modifiable means, why should it create a new address? It is going to go and do the change in the same address only. So that is one concept what you have to understand. So now what is the role of this identity operator here? That is what you have to understand. Identity operators are used for the comparison purpose. It is also used for the comparison purpose. But what it is going to compare? What it is going to compare is comparison of address. It is going to compare the address. So it is going to compare whether both my variables are referring to the same memory location or not. That is what my identity operator is going to be doing. So the is and not is. These are the two identity operators that we are having. Okay, so is operator will give me the result as true when both of my variables, okay, are pointing to the same memory location. Okay, so understand, the operator will give me true when both of the variables are pointing to the same memory location. Okay, otherwise it is going to tell false. So otherwise it will return false. Right. So now let us see an example for this, how this is going to be working for me. Okay, so yes, create a value, then C variable, I'm going to create a value. Then for C variable, I'm going to create another value. Right. So first step, what we are going to do is, I am saying print A and ID of A. Okay. Then I'm just going to print B and what is the address of B. Okay. And then I'm going to print, okay, the C value and the address of C. Done. What is the next step I'm going to be doing here is, I'm saying print A is B. So what do you mean by this is, you're going to check whether A and B are pointing to the same memory location, whether they are pointing to the same address or not. So same thing, I'm just going to say A, print A is C. Okay, so now let us run the program. Now let us just execute the program. See what happens. So this is the memory location of A and this is the memory location of B. Did you see both are the same? Why both are same? Because both are having the same value. So please remember, what did I tell you? The memory location will happen based on the values. So since A and B are having the same value, what it is going to do? It will create one memory location. Inside that memory address, it will place the value 10. Okay, 10 is going to be stored inside the address, and both my A and B variable will be pointing to the same address. Same thing, if you see in C language, what will happen? Separate memory address for A, separate memory address for B, separate memory address for C. So value same or not same, it doesn't bother. There the memory location will happen based on the variables. Based on the variables. For each and every variable, one memory location will be allotted. But in Python, it is not like that. So that is why I told you, based on the mutable and immutable concepts. So this is also plays a crucial role in memory allocation. So that is why I just gave you a small recap of this and then moving on to the identity operator. Okay, so please remember, in case if the values are same, then it will not be creating a separate memory locations. Okay, what it will do is it is going to share the memory. But for C value is different, so it will create a separate memory address for that. So when I say A is B, it is true because both A and B variable are having the same address. The address of both the variables is same. So A is B is true. Now when I say A is C, address of A is different, address of C is different. So it is giving you the value as false. So please remember, that is the work of my identity operator. So identity operators are used to check or used to compare the memory address. It is used to check whether both my variables are pointing to the same memory location or not. So that is the role of my identity operator. Again, as I said, this rule is little different. Based on the data types, the rule also kind of changes. So let me say the same example. Now I'm going to create a list. So I said list comes under which category? List comes under the mutable category. So I'm going to create a list. I'm saying 10, 20, 30. This is the list one value. Okay, let me just copy this data. Okay, I'm giving the same. Only thing is I'm here changing the name of the list. I'm giving here as list 2. Both the list is having the exactly same value. No changes at all. Now, see what happens. I am saying print L1, comma, same way, ID of L1. Okay. So, right. Now, the next line I'm saying print L2 and print the ID of L2. Right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply my identity operator on this. I am saying print L1 is L2. L1 is L2. Now when I run this, see what happens. Sorry, L1. Right. See what happens. It says false. Why is it false? Both the values are same. So if the memory location is going to happen based on values, then it should create one memory address. Inside that memory address, shit, sorry, yeah. So inside that memory address, the details should have been there. So why is it not there? That is the question what we have to be asking. Sorry guys, by mistake I just clicked something else. So I'll just retype it. just say print L1, comma, ID of L1. L1 is L2. Yeah. See here what happens. So according to the rule, what we just saw, only one memory location needs to be created and it should have placed this value inside that memory location, and both my L1 and L2 variable should be pointing to that. That is what happened with my integers. But see what happens when I'm using a list. A separate memory address is created for L1. A separate memory address is created for L2 because it is a mutable object. So that is why I said the memory, how it is getting created is going to differ according to the data type. So according to what type of data type it is, the location, how the memory address is getting created also actually differs for us. So here in this case, what happens? It is creating a separate memory for all my list, even though the values are same. Even though both the list is having an exact same. So that is why when I say L1 is L2, it is giving me the result as false. Okay, so now let us add one more. I am saying L3. I am saying L3 is equal to L1. Okay, see here how I am copying the values. I am saying L3 is equal to L1. So what do you mean by that? Whatever L1 is having, that I am assigning to L3 also. So whatever L1 is having, I am asking whatever there in L1, I am asking the same thing to be referenced to my L3 also. So now let us say print L3, comma, ID of L3. Okay, then I'm going to say print L3 is L1. So now you run this piece of code. See what happens. Can you just see what is the address of L1 and what is the address of L3? Both are having same address. How is it? Because I am using the equals to and I am assigning the same thing to L3. So I am saying whatever L1 is pointing to, whatever L1 is pointing to, assign the same thing to L3 also. So make L3 also point to the same one. So that means what? So L3 is also now going to point to the same address of that is there with my L1. So that is why I'm saying L3 is L1 means it is giving me the value as true. So now what it means? Both my L1 and L3 are having the same values, or both are pointing to the same address. So in case any changes that you do using L1 is affecting L3 also. Say for example, okay, say for example, I am saying L1 of, okay, you know list is also index based. So I am saying L1 of 2. So L1 means what? This of 2 means this is 0 index, this is 1 index, this is index 2. 30. So for 30, I am changing the value as 500. So L1 of 2, I am changing the value as 500. Now let us print. So I am printing L1. Then I am printing L3. See what happens. See what happens. This is L1. This is L3. Where did I make the change? I made the change to L1 only. But see, L3 is also having the change. So that is what I said. Here, when you create a value like this, what it means is, whichever, address L1 is pointing to, you are making L3 also to point to the same address. In that address only you are doing the changes. So when you are doing the changes to that address means what will happen? It will definitely affect both the persons living in that. So that is why you are getting the values like this. So that is the role of my identity operator. So understand, identity operator, what is the purpose is to check whether the variables are pointing to the same memory address or not. So is, not is. Is operator will return true if the address is same. Otherwise, it is going to return false. Right? Not is opposite of it. So whatever the is operator is doing, the opposite of that, your not is operator will be giving you. Okay, so that is what your identity operators are all about. Okay, so we will be using the identity operators more when we are dealing with the concept of OOPS. When we are going to learn the concept of OOPS, there again the identity operator we will be making use of a lot. Right, so now moving on to the next operators. The next set of operators what we have in Python is something called as bitwise operators. So what do you call them? We call them as bitwise operators. So remember, the bitwise operators are same in all programming languages. You have the bitwise operators in C, you have it in C++, you have it in Java, you have it in C Sharp. Same bitwise operators are there in Python also. So Python is also having the same bitwise operators, no changes. Everything is going to be the same. So what are the bitwise operators you have? And we call this operator as the AND operator. We have the OR operator. Okay, then you have the XOR operator. We call this as XOR. Okay, so that is nothing but a caret symbol, kind of a caret symbol it will be coming. Then of course you have the complement operator. So we have the complement operator, and then of course you have the left shift operator, and then you have the right shift operator. So these are all the bitwise operators that you will be learning. So what are that? AND, OR, XOR, complement, left shift and right shift. Okay, now what are the important things you have to remember with regards to the bitwise operator is bitwise operators can be applied only on integers. So bitwise operators can be applied on integers only. So if the data type is an int, can be applied, not on anything else. So not on any other data type. That is the first point what you have to remember. Okay, the next point is how does my bitwise operator work? As the name suggests, bit. As the name suggests, bit. So whatever the value you are having, okay, whatever number you are having, that number is going to be a decimal number. So the decimal number will be converted into the binary value. The decimal number, whatever number you are going to apply these operators, you are going to apply these operators on some numbers. So that number is not normally a decimal number. How we use 10, 20, 100 like that. So all those are decimal numbers. So before performing this operation, what it will do is it will convert the decimal number into a binary number. Okay, then it will perform the operation. Then it will perform the operation. Then it will convert, so it is going to convert the result back into a decimal value. Decimal value and display. So this is how your cycle will be running. So please understand, you will be giving a binary operator. On this binary operator, you will apply the bitwise operator. So any of the operators you will apply on it. So how is the operation going to take? First, it will convert the decimal number into the binary number. Then whatever operation, that is left shift, right shift, complement, whatever you are saying, it will perform that. After performing, it will get a result. So before displaying the result to us, it will convert the result back into a decimal number, and then only it is going to display the result for us. So this is how your bitwise operators will be performing. Right. So now let us see some examples and try to understand how these bitwise operators are going to be working for us. Right. So I'm just going to take some simple examples here. Okay. So here you go. I'm taking these two variables. Okay. I'm going to take these two variables. So what is the first thing we are going to discuss? We will be discussing first about the bitwise AND operator. Okay, so the first we are going to discuss, okay, about the AND operator. And the symbol for the AND operator is the ampersand symbol. Okay, so let us take these values. So I am taking I variable. I variable I am giving the value as 10, and for the j variable I am giving the value as 20. Okay, very good. Now, what did I tell you? The bitwise operators are working based on the binary values. It will convert the decimal numbers into a binary number. So, when I say I is equal to 10, what is the binary equivalent of 10? How can I write the 10 in binary number? So, this is going to be the binary value. I hope you guys remember your basic maths. So, how to convert a number into a binary number? Keep on dividing it by 2. So all the reminders, you are going to take it together. So how many numbers are coming? Keep that number. Remaining numbers, you are going to have it as 0. I am going to take it as a 8-bit format. So 8-bit is equal to 1 byte, right? So I am taking it as a 8-bit format here. So I am adding all the remaining things as 0. So this is the number for 10 and this is the binary number for 20. Okay, what is the first operation I have to perform? I am performing the AND operation. So I am performing the AND operation. So now, how does the AND operator work? You remember, how does the logical AND operator work? When both the values are true, it is giving you the result as true. Otherwise, the result is false. Am I right? This is how your logical AND works. Same concept here also. Same concept here also. But only thing is, here it is going to happen based on 0 and 1. And we know 1 means true, 0 means false. So if both the operators are true, then your result is true. Otherwise, for all the things, it is going to be false. False means what? 0. So here I am saying 0, 0. No, 0. Let us start from here. So 0, 0 is 0. Okay, again, I'm getting 0, 0, which is again another 0. 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, because only 1 and 1, both the expressions are one true, then only my condition is going to be true. So if applying the same thing, if both the bits are 1, both the bits are 1, result is 1. Otherwise, for all other combinations, result is going to be 0. So what is going to happen? This is the output you will get. So this number will get converted into a decimal value, which is nothing but 0. All zeros, when you say convert it to a decimal, it is going to give you the value as 0 only. So let us try it out. I am saying I is equal to 10 and I am saying j is equal to 20. So say print I ampersand j. That is I and j. Run the program. What is the output you got? 0. That is the output we are also getting. This is the output we are also getting. Superb. Now, how does my OR operator work? OR operator is represented by this pipe symbol. Okay, same as my logical OR. Same as my logical OR. So, how does a logical OR operator works? If any one expression is also true, means the result is true. All other combination, it is false. So 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, again 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 1. Okay, 0, 1, sorry, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0. So now what we have to do? We have to convert this number. Okay, we have to convert this number into a decimal value. And we have to write the result of it. So let us cross check. Let us cross check our answer when I am using the OR operator. When I am using the OR operator, what is the value I will be getting? See, you can cross check by finding the decimal value of this. It is going to give you the value same as what you are getting there. Right. The third operator what we have is our XOR operator. Okay, it is XOR. XOR means what? Exclusive OR. So it means exclusive OR. So how is it different from OR operator? So please understand XOR. what XOR will be doing is, okay, if both the bits are same, then it will give 0. Otherwise, it is going to give 1. This is how my XOR operation will be working. So just remember this. If both the bits are same, that is, if it is 1 and 1, it is 0. If it is 0 and 0, it is 0. So when both the bits are same, then it is 0. Otherwise, it is 1. So this is how my XOR will be performing. Okay, so in our case, this XOR in our example, okay, this I'm telling you in this example, not always it is going to come the same. In our example, both of these operations will give the same result. So let us check that also. And I'm just going to put an XOR symbol here. Because here, both the bits are same, it is 0. Otherwise, it is 1. So I'm getting the combination like that itself. These are the 3 bitwise operators that we'll be using, AND, OR, XOR. Next comes my complementary operator. Okay, see, the complementary operator can be used in 2 different ways. Okay, so this we call it as a complementary operator. Okay, in this can be represented in 2 ways. We have something called as ones complement, and we have something which is called as twos complement. So when they particularly ask you what is the ones complement, that means first what you are going to do is you are going to get a decimal number, convert the decimal number into a binary number. After doing that, reverse the bits. Reverse the bits. And then you are going to give the result. That is what your ones complement is all about. For example, okay, let us take a simple example. Here, I'm going to say, okay, so let us take an example. Okay, let us take it for this 30 itself. This is the binary value. This is the binary equivalent of the number 30. I am saying complement of 30. Okay, guys, this is ones complement I am doing. Okay, ones complement, what it is to be done? You are supposed to reverse all the bits. So if it is 0, give it as 1. So 1, 1. If it is 1, you are going to give it as 0. 0, 0, 0, 1. So this is going to be the ones complement. So this is how you are going to treat the ones complement. Two's complement, we have a simple formula. You can make use of a simple formula. So please remember one thing. Whenever they are asking you any predict the output programs where they are using the complementary operator means, definitely your compilers, okay, all of your compilers will always give the result based on the two's complement only. So the result is always going to be on the two's complement. So if they are particularly asking you what is the ones complement of this value, then what you are going to do, whatever is that number, try to find the binary value of that number, and whatever is the given value here, you just have to reverse it. You just have to flip it. So if it is 0, you will give it as 1. If it is 1, you will give it as 0. That is how one's complement is done. Okay, two's complement, how you have to do it is, if it is a positive number, if the number is a positive number, then what you have to do is step 1. Okay, step 1 says result will be in negative. Result will be in negative. So that is the first step. So whenever the number they are giving is a positive number, then definitely the result is going to have a minus value. So result is going to be a negative value, and negative value, what you have to do is whatever is the positive number, whatever number they have given, add 1 to that value. Add 1 to that value. Let us try to understand what exactly is this means. Okay, say for example, I am saying complement of 30. This is 2's complement. Okay, that is 1's complement. Don't get confused. So I am saying 2's complement of 30. Okay, so 30 is a positive number. I did not give any negative values. So definitely the result will be in minus. So the result is going to be in minus. So what did I say? Whatever is the number, the result will have plus 1. So it is going to say minus 31. Try it out. Okay. Say print complement of 30. So complement of the number 30. What it says? Minus 31. That is the same result what I got. So remember, if it is a positive number, definitely the result will be in a negative value. And whatever is that number, you just have to add 1 to that value. Right. So if it is a negative number, what am I supposed to do? So then result will be in positive. So whatever it is going to be the opposite of it. So if it is a negative number, result will be in positive value. You just have to subtract 1 from the value. Take the same example. Complement of minus 30. This time I am saying complement of minus 30. So what do you say? Result will be in a positive value. All you have to do is you have to subtract 1 from the value. So let us run this also simultaneously. I am going to say complement of minus 30. So what is it coming? 29. That's the result I told you also. Sorry, I didn't write it. Okay, that's the result I told you also. So whatever is the result will be in positive. See how it is? It is not having any symbol. It is a positive number. You just have to subtract 1 from the value. So no need to do convert it, then add it, then do it. No, you can apply this very, very simple formula and get the value done. Okay, so this is how you will be finding the complementary of a value. So if it is a ones complement, how to do it? If it is a twos complement, then what is the way of doing it? So these are the formula what you have to remember. Right. So now what is the next two operators? This is where a lot of people get mostly confused. We have the left shift operator. Okay, so what is the left shift operator exactly? First understand the syntax. So X operator N. So this is the syntax what we normally will be using. So what do you mean by this syntax? X is the number, is the decimal number on which you are going to apply the operator. So please understand, X is nothing but the decimal number on which you are going to apply this left shift operator. Now what do you mean by N? N is the number of bits. N represents the number of bits. So number of bits that needs to be shifted. Okay, from where you have to shift? From which side you have to shift? Obviously from the left side, because that is why we call it as a left shift operator. So N represents the number of bits that needs to be shifted from the right hand side, sorry, from the left hand side, So this is the basic thing about my left shift operator. So now you may ask, ma'am, what is this bit? So please understand here, each and every number here, the 0 and 1 is what we call as a bit. So this is a 8-bit number. That is, every number we call it as a bit. So here what I am saying, n represents the number of bits. So see, basically if this is a number, that means this side is what I call as the right side. This side is what I call as the left side. Am I right? So how many number of bits you have to shift from the left side? So from the left side, how many numbers you have to remove? That is what you are going to represent by the letter N. Okay, let us take an example. To understand this more clearly, let us take an example of how this is actually going to work for me. So here I am taking the example 20 left shift. So this is the 20 left shift. This is what I'm saying. This is the example I'm taking. Let us try to understand this. So first, what did I say? binary operators are working basically on my binary, I mean bitwise operators will work basically on my binary values only. So now 20 is my x, 2 is my n value, because that is the syntax I have used here. So according to the syntax, 20 is the x value, 2 is the n value. So now first to find the binary equivalent of 20. So when you convert 20 into a binary value, what you will be getting? So this is the value you will be getting. So how many bits to shift? I want you to shift 2 bits. So that means what? From the left side, you have to remove 2 bits. So number of bits, so bits shifted is 2. So when you shift 2 bits, what is the value you will be getting? 2 bits will be gone. So this is the remaining value. This is the remaining number you will be getting. So next to what I have to do. So please understand, how many ever bits you are removing from the left hand side, that much of 0 you have to add on the right hand side. Because we are removing from the left side, so the 0 needs to be balanced. So the number has to be balanced because it's always supposed to be a 8-bit format. So the number needs to be balanced. So how I am supposed to balance it? I have to add how many ever bits I am removing from the left side. I have to add that much of zeros on the right side. Don't add anything else other than 0. So now again it become a 8-bit format. Now it has again become an 8-bit format. So this is the new number. So for this number, now I have to find the decimal value. So this is my result. So this number is equivalent to the value 80. So let us check it. So I am saying print 20 left shift, run this. What is the, sorry, what is the output I got here? 80. That is the value I am getting here also. So remember how the left shift operator works. So whatever is the number they are giving, first find the binary equivalent of that number. How many bits to shift? 2 bits. So remove that much of zeros. I mean, whatever is the value that is there, whether it is 0 or whether it is 1. How many ever bits they are asking to remove, remove that much of bits from the left side. And how many you are removing? That much of zeros needs to be added on the right side. So then you will be getting one new binary number. You have to find the decimal equivalent of this binary number. That will be your result. So this is one method of doing. Do we have any shortcut for this? Yes, of course I have a shortcut for this. Of course I have a shortcut for this. So what is the shortcut? What is the shortcut? This is the formula of the shortcut. So what is the shortcut? This is the formula of the shortcut. That is what? X into 2 to the power of n. We represent the power of operator using the exponent only. Na? So that is what I have written. X into 2 to the power of n. So why is this 2? Because it is a binary values. Base 2. So always it is going to be only 2. So x is nothing but the value. So what is the x here? 20. So how to represent this? 20 into 2 to the power of n. N is what? 2. Number of bits. 2. So what is it going to come? How is it going to come? So you remember, whenever you are having the exponent, so how is the operation going to take? From the right side. The evaluation, whenever you are having an exponent, first the exponent will happen, then only it will go to the other operator from the right side. So 2 into the power of 2. What is that? 4. 20 into 4. How much it is? Nothing but 80. Same answer what you got here. Same answer what I got here. So cross check it. You can cross check it. So this is what you call as a multiplication method. We call this method, this formula, we call it as a multiplication method. So this is the formula to check, to cross check your left shift operator's result. So this is how you do it with a normal way, converting from decimal to binary and then binary again to decimal. So this is the normal way. Cross-checking method, you can use this formula to get the things. So as simple as that, you will be able to get the result. Right. I will share you guys a couple of more questions. Okay. Which I want you guys to give it a try. Okay. Just give it a try whether you are able to do that or how is this to be done. So we do have one more operator that we will be covering in our next session, and then we have one more, which is your conditional operator. So that also we will be seeing in our next sessions.